My job is to make sure they get across the finish line, get on the job, and President Trump deserves a team.
We need Pam Bondi as the Attorney General so that we can stop the DOJ from weaponizing their power. We need Scott Bessent at the Treasury so we can stop this conversation around a global taxation and a minimum tax.
He has selected people who are willing to not move as business as usual, but yet are ready for action.
Former Trump attorney Michael Cohen begging President Biden to pardon him before he leaves office. He says he deserves a pardon like the one Biden gave his son, Hunter, claiming Biden has an obligation to protect him and other critics from President-elect Trump. Cohen also revealed his efforts to reach out to the Biden administration. That's curious, isn't it?
It is.
And an LA-based humanitarian organization is on the ground near the border zone and the burn zone there to help community. Excuse me? Kayleigh, we're going to bring in. I thought that was strange. I'm like, what am I reading here? Because I'm looking at myself and Kayleigh and talking about that wildfires. A wildfire that we will get back to in just a moment. But let's take a second here to talk about a week from today is the inauguration of President-elect Trump. They are planning a little shock and awe, which I think is probably an apt term. How do you see their planning in order to overwhelm everybody with their preparedness?
I think the motto is go big or go home this time. Trump has had 4 years to think about this, and he's clearly given it a lot of thought. Just in pure numbers, okay, think about it. They've indicated 100 executive actions. Biden holds the record for the most executive orders on day one. He had 15, and then he had 2 executive actions. Almost every predecessor only had 1 executive order on the first day. Trump wants to not just double Biden, but triple him, quadruple, and beyond with 100 executive orders. The content is what I'm interested in. I asked Tom Homan, 5 executive orders is what I'm hearing from NBC on immigration. He said, expect way more than that. So the content will be as interesting as the volume.
So 3 major hearings tomorrow. We're going to carry one for sure. Pete Hegseth at 9:30. Then on Wednesday, you got a flurry of activity on the Hill. We'll get to that later. Meanwhile, J.D. Vance, I thought was very interesting with Shannon on Sunday. He thinks the Biden folks have left them a mess and made the point this way. Watch.
President Biden has left us an absolute dumpster fire. Now, we're excited to get to work, but we need to be open and honest about the fact that President Biden has not left the next administration in a good place. We have a wide open southern border. Oil is going through the roof. Bond yields went from 4.1% to 4.8% in a month. It's on top of the fact that President Biden has been running the largest peacetime deficits in the history of this country.
What I think is phenomenal is how different the country and the world is now than it was in January of 2017.
It's incredible. I mean, just foreign policy. You have 2 new wars on your watch with Israel, which could wind down at some point. It'd be a huge accomplishment if it does. Same with Ukraine, Afghanistan. I mean, so much has happened. But J.D. Vance, one thing I was struck by in his interview, he's such a good messenger for this administration. At one point, he talked about compassion and looking at people with compassion, just this kind of soft undertone to the policies they're going to put forward. He talked about the January 6th pardons and the way they're going to methodically kind of work through that. He is a very thoughtful and I think will be a very effective vice president and putting a real soft face on what are going to be some hard policies, deportations and the like.
Great point.
Still, President Joe Biden thinks he would have won.
How is she?
Well, yes, we'll get to that. Watch here.
I think I would have beaten Trump, could have beaten Trump, and I think that Kamala could have beaten Trump, would have beaten Trump. I didn't want to be one who caused a party that wasn't unified to lose an election. And that's why I stepped aside, but I was confident she could win.
Well, obviously she didn't win, but also I don't understand his decision to constantly plow over old ground that doesn't get him anywhere to a place where he would like to try to repair his legacy.
He's very stubborn. I think that's clear. And you look at the final Real Clear Politics average of Biden-Trump matchup, and you had Trump beating Biden by 3.1%, which is double the margin that Trump beat Kamala by. It's just not simply true that he could have beat Trump. And, of course, that's all hypothetical. But the Real Clear Politics average kind of dismisses that. But if you go back to that Wall Street Journal report about Biden waning and, faltering in his final days, one of the big takeaways was that pollsters were kept away from him. Democrats who met with him were alarmed and incredulous at his concept of the polls versus reality. His staff did him a disservice. He was in a cocoon. He wasn't getting accurate information, and here we are.
I just don't know a lot of people who believe that comment. I mean, on his face, he could have won, she could have won. Well, she did run, and she lost. It's over. We move on. Kayleigh, thank you. We'll see you at noon on Outnumbered, right?
Thank you. Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Good
See you
deal.
then.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.